Hey everybody, welcome to the Transformation Space. This is Tony, and today I'd like to talk a little bit about a program that I facilitate called Rewriting Your Self-Narrative from Surviving to Thriving. And the self-narrative plays a big role in how we feel about ourselves, how we interact with the world, our mental health in general, our well-being. And I'd like to share with you a little bit about what the self-narrative is and how it's formed and how we interact with it on a regular basis. So let's jump right in. Have you ever asked yourself, who am I? Have you ever wondered why you have the life you have? It's kind of an interesting concept. Many of us don't spend time with this because it can be confusing and it can be unnerving at times, really having to face what's inside. Sometimes we don't know, and sometimes we have a general fear of what's there because many of us have locked away a number of uncomfortable things that really looking at who we are could potentially bring to light. So it can be a little bit difficult. But this is how we do it. So what is the self-narrative and how is it developed? It's a self-narrative is a story of who we are. It's our story, right? And it gets developed starting very, very young. Usually someone starts this story for us as we're growing and learning from small childhood, and where things are impressed upon us on how to interact with other people, and we learn through observation. We watch those around us and our caretakers and relatives and adults that are us we spend time with, and we learn from them. So a lot of what is ingrained in us has to do with things that we saw as a small child, and oftentimes we don't even have memories of what this was or what it was about. So this story we have about ourselves is built upon layers upon layers upon layers that we didn't even really start ourselves. It happens when what's called we become socialized, which means our interactions are developed based upon our surroundings and the people in them, again, and what we observe. So it's difficult sometimes when we are in a place of discomfort or unhappiness, and we feel like I just need to move. Or I just need a new car. I just need new clothes. I need a bag. Shopping's a big one. Or I need to have a drink, and I'm uncomfortable. Or I'm successful, but I'm not sure why I'm unhappy. Successful, maybe in the words of society, and I'm not sure why I'm unhappy. And sometimes the answers to these questions is many, many layers back, far back, in a place that got started before we started writing our own story, and we built on it. We started building on this concept of who we were that was given to us by other people, and we end up in a place where we thought we were going based on our own decisions, and it may not have been completely based upon what we wanted, because it was built on something that was given to us. So let's talk about what the self-narrative is. It has 5 main components. And the first one is personal identity, and then life experiences, continuity, values and beliefs, and goals and aspirations. And those are the 5 main pieces of it. So how does this interact with our mental health? Well, it was a lot of what I just discussed. These 5 components together, building this story about who we are. So we have a perception of this and a definition, and how do we define ourselves based on traits and roles and characteristics that people believe that we may have created. And this is a personal identity, and includes, makes us unique. Someone might see themselves as a creative problem solver or a devoted parent or an ambitious professional, and personal identity in the self-narrative also encompasses how people understand their strengths and weaknesses in their core values. So this begins during socialization. As I mentioned, it's a time when we're learning how to be interacted with other people and be part of a society or a family. And a personal identity in the self-narrative goes well beyond simple labels to include how people understand their core characteristics, what our roles are, based upon who we believe we are in family settings and business settings and social settings, and what our place is in the world. It's shaped by our personal experiences and cultural influences and social interactions. So it goes back, growth, setback, loss, gain, vulnerability, or weakness. This is all our interpretation and assessment of our life events, right? We have selective memory, and a lot of our event interpretation and framing and reframing our memories over time is often what happens as we think about things and process information, and we change how we feel about things. And this can end up being a positive or negative impact depending upon the story that's created. So it refers how we interpret and assign meaning to our events in our lives. People tend to weave their experiences into a coherent story, often finding patterns and themes. Sometimes they might view challenges as opportunities for growth or interpret setbacks as learning experiences. But the way people frame their experiences in their self-narrative can significantly impact our emotional responses and future behaviors. So people tend to live selectively, and remember that interpreting experiences in a way that we align with our overall self-narrative. So we change these interpretations so that we feel like we are in alignment. And significant events, both positive and negative, are often given a special meaning and can structure as turning points in life or defining moments. So when we think about a death or a birth or a move or a big job move, we tend to encompass all the things that happen within that or around that and make sense of it as a change and a significant shift in our life. Sometimes making sense of that can cause a huge shift in how we see our world. I can give you an example for myself. Stepping out of a relationship of a long period of time, almost 17 years, caused me to see my entire future as different, because what I had planned is no longer with that person. So I have a turning point, and it's redefined how I was going to move forward. Continuity has to do with the aspect of how individuals connect with our past and our present, and what's the anticipated future, right? So we take these past, present, and future concepts, and then we put them together to make a cohesion, right? Oftentimes, we think about our future, and it's informed by our past, right? What happened before? Well, I'm not going to do that thing again, so I'm going to change where I'm going because I experienced this issue in the past, so I need to rearrange how I'm going to move toward in the future. And this is a positive thing, right? It can make positive impact. But if we're not aware of that, and we're simply just going through life, walking through life, not reflecting, we can be making choices based upon things that have happened to us that we're not aware of. For instance, as we talked about earlier, learning to be socialized within a family unit or in a social situation where we have to create safety around ourselves, we may choose not to engage in certain things that could be helpful for us for fear-based reasons. But continuity also involves creating a sense of consistency in our identity over time, and as the circumstances change. So, for example, someone might see their childhood interest in nature as a starting point for their current career in environmental science. So you might experience something that affects your career choices, and then this person might envision a future where they make significant contributions to conservation efforts, because one of the things that humans do need is a sense of purpose. And so that can be all tied up together. But continuity is a self-narrative, part of the self-narrative that involves creating a sense of coherence across different life stages and roles. So you often interpret these past events in light of our current understanding and use our personal history to explain the present situation and future goals. So again, what happened, we use to help explain what's going on now and then how we're going to move forward in the future. Our values and beliefs are a big part of what we do, because this informs us on our right and wrong. There are fundamental principles that shape our world. It gives explanation to motivation, and the decisions that we make. It's influenced by our family, culture, education, and personal experience, and it evolves over time, right? So as we grow and learn new things and incorporate different aspects of cultures we may be involved in, or social situations that we decide we like, we can have these things change over time. But they're fundamental principles and ideas that shape our individual understanding of the world and guide our actions. And the self-narrative values and beliefs often form the backbone of how we explain our motivations and decisions. So for example, someone who values honesty might incorporate stories of times they chose to tell the truth, even when it was difficult, and bring that into their self-narrative. So if someone is a rule follower, for example, and really believes that being honest at all times is important, this will likely influence how they shape their future and how they live in the present. And values and beliefs in the self-narrative often serve as guiding principles in decision-making in our behavior. It can be influenced again by family, culture, education, and personal experiences. Our goals and aspirations are an aspect that involves how we envision our future and what we aim to achieve, right? So this can be narrow, broad, long-term, and short-term. I often talk about having my goals for today, my goals for the week, for the month, biannually, annually, 3 years, 5 years, and then long-term. So, for example, right now I'm in school for my Master's in Social Work program, which I intend to complete in 3 years' time. At that time, I will begin to work in the field where I can get observational hours to, in 3 years after that, become a licensed clinical social worker. And then after that, I intend to have, another 23-year career, which take me to about 76 or so. And that is the plan that I've had for quite some time. So when I get up in the morning and I look at my day, what am I doing today that moves me toward that? And what have I done with my week that has helped me attain that goal? And in that experience, is my journey enjoyable while I'm doing these things? I get flexibility to do a lot of different things in my life and work in different capacities of transformation. But it all brings me toward this ultimate goal. And it's easy for me to make decisions because I'm very clear about what I want to do with my life and what I am doing with my life. So when shiny objects or exciting things come into my view that might entice me to stray, I stop and reflect on those things before I engage. Will they be helpful to me? Will it be enjoyable for a moment? Will it cause me to step off track? Because I can be enticed by things that are fun and maybe take me out of the moment for relief. But I have a plan, and I want to go somewhere, and I want to do something. And so it's important to me to be able to make decisions to do that. It also helps me balance my time within the moment that I'm doing what I'm doing to get where I want to go. So having these goals to be set, which is I think we talk about in coaching quite a bit, helps us to stay on track and gives us clarity on our life. So goals and aspirations in a self-narrative can range from concrete objectives like getting a specific job, or broader aims like making a positive impact on society. And they can be both. They're often future-oriented elements of the self-narrative, and they drive motivation and provide a sense of purpose. I think one thing to remember within our goals and aspirations is that we are enjoying our journey toward these things. It's when we're solely focused on the destination, we can't really enjoy where we are and in the present. And being present is really the only moment that we have. Goals and aspirations are they're not tangible. They're ideas, which is keeps us going. But if we don't enjoy the journey onto those ideas, it's not going to be pleasant, because we never truly end up at the destination. And when we do end up at the destinations along the way, if we don't have further journey to continue to other destinations, life becomes a lack of purpose. So I know it sounds like a lot, but it's worth thinking about and considering, because it does make life more enjoyable. So how do each of these impact aspects interact with one another? Well, they influence one another, and they collectively form a complex and dynamic self-narrative that evolves over time. This narrative helps us make sense of our lives, guides our decisions, and it maintains a sense of coherence in our identity across different contexts and life stages. As life changes, we need to have a sense of self, because it can be very unnerving to lose that sense of self. You can feel very lost. Having a strong sense of self can be very powerful, and it can make everything much easier in guidance. So in practice, these elements are deeply interconnected. So I'm going to give you an example of a woman named Lisa. Her goal was to become a principal. It's aspect number 5. And is directly tied to her personal identity as a first-generation student. This is aspect number 1. And her life experience of overcoming challenges in education. That was her life experience in aspect number 2. And her value of education and equity in aspect number 4. And it's tied in her sense of continuity and wanting to help others like herself. This interconnected nature of the self-narrative elements helps create a cohesive sense of self and provides Lisa with a framework to understand how her life and making decisions about her future are going to happen. So becoming aware of society's perspective and our self-narrative also is really important, because how others see us is considerably an important piece of who we are. We can see ourselves as ourselves, and that is the only way that we truly know ourselves. But the way others know us is also a big piece of who we are, because remember, how we're perceived in society is part of our identity, even if we're not aware of it. And so how others see us is a big piece of it. So who's right? Is it us? Is it them? Is it a combination? This requires a lot of introspection and external observation, and it's hard to observe ourselves sometimes when we only see what we can see because we are within and we are experiencing this. But there are some ways to gain awareness around this, to really understand how we're perceived and incorporate that into who we are. So the one way is social feedback. Pay attention to how others react to your behaviors, choices, and expressions of your self-narrative, right? Their responses can provide insight into how your narrative aligns with or diverges from societal norms. So if, for instance, I'll give you an example of a client of mine who talked to me about being an outdoorsy person, loved being outside, but the conversations we had included him working a lot and then spending time with his family and catching up on housework and running errands. And I didn't really hear him talk a lot about being outside. And so to me, I didn't really see him as an outdoorsy person. Um, he did, but that to me is a point of confusion, right? Um, he also wasn't the happiest person. He seemed very stressed out. And so when I'm working with someone in that capacity and I hear them talk about the way that they believe that they are, and it doesn't really reflect the way that their life actually is, what that tells me is that there is a conflict in the way that their thought process is. And this can be a place where people are unhappy and they don't understand why. Because he may truly believe that he feels like an outdoorsy person. And if that's true for him inside, his life doesn't align with that, which doesn't feel good. And he may not be aware of that. Maybe he was an outdoorsy person at one time. Maybe as a kid he loved being outside and he loved spending time outside, and he hung on to that piece of his identity. And as his life grew and changed, that was lost without really his awareness of that. And that happens to us. Again, we have the story that gets built. We can be stuck in layers back. And all of a sudden we're living this life that we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing, and we're unhappy. And this could have very well been an example of that. This gentleman was a hair client of mine, so I did his hair, and it wasn't really appropriate for me to begin inquiring into this area of conflict for him. But it was a very interesting conversation, as he did believe he was an identity that he didn't really portray. Another way to look at this is a cultural analysis of yourself. So study the media, literature, and popular culture in our society. This can help us understand the dominant narratives and values, allowing us to compare our own story against these broader societal templates. So for an example of that, culturally, some of us have stronger cultural backgrounds than others do, or we're more aware of them, and some of us are less aware of them. And for me, I didn't have a really strong awareness about this until recently, and so I didn't really feel like I fit in any specific cultural way. But what I can say about that is, when I lived in Madison, Wisconsin, I never really felt like I fit into Midwest culture. I didn't look the same, didn't act the same, and so I kind of always felt on the outside of that. I understood why, but I didn't really understand what that meant from a cultural standpoint. And so I did see that people acted and presented themselves differently than I did. And so that was in conflict kind of with who I felt I was as being part of that community. Even though everybody was very nice, I never really felt like I fit in. So that was a way for me to kind of see, culturally what the area was that I was in was a little bit different than who I was. Understanding, getting diverse perspectives is a great way to do this too, engaging with people from different backgrounds, listening to their stories. It's going to help you recognize how your narrative might be perceived differently across various social contexts. This has been very interesting for me in Hawaii, being that my visual representation is something that does align with historical conflict and colonization. And it's difficult sometimes for me to sit with that, although I understand why that is. And so it's important for me to be aware of that out of respect, and to remind myself that I'm a guest here. And there's reason for that, to know where my place is. I'm here as support and love for the community. The diversity in this area allows me to feel free to be who I am. But there's also a place that I stay within the community, and because of my understanding of the diversity within the area. Professional feedback is another great one. Seek input from your mentors, your counselors, therapists, anybody that can provide an objective view on your self-narrative and how you might be perceived in a professional and personal settings. And I often try to observe the way people interact with me and become socially aware about how my interactions elicit responses from others, because it is important to know what your what your intentions are with people, right? What is your intention for each social setting? What is your intention with your professional setting? What is your intention for caretaking of yourself while being respectful to others? There's a lot of pieces here. And it is best to get feedback because we can't always see what we're doing. And sometimes people won't be honest with us about how our interactions affect them. So it is important to ask these things from others. And the last thing, one of the most important, is self-reflection. Regular examining your assumptions and beliefs. Consider how they might have been shaped by social influences and whether they truly reflect your authentic self, right? So one of the things I love to do on Saturday night after my last day of work for the week is to sit and look and reflect on how my week was. How did I interact? What challenges came up? What things worked well? Who did I really enjoy being with? Who did I not enjoy being with? How am I going to spend my time next week? Did what I do work toward where I want to be? And other things about me that I maybe thought I was doing right that as I did them, came with maybe negative consequences, and how am I going to change that next time? So this is the only way we grow, is to really look at what we have done, what worked, what didn't work, what I'm going to continue doing, and what am I going to change, are really great ways to kind of debrief any sort of interactions. So awareness it's a gradual process. It takes a long time, and it requires ongoing effort and openness to new perspectives. I think the most important thing here is to, balance your views with society views, with your sense of authenticity, and, am I conforming? Am I being myself? When do each of those need to happen? While respecting others and respecting myself, and don't take it personal. We shouldn't. Judging ourselves is so easy to do and so common. And we really gain nothing from this action, because judgment, in a negative sense, is deciding something is good or bad, right? And this is a journey. Okay, we are exploring as we move about the day. And we don't know what we're doing right or wrong until we make a decision to do that. And watch what the interaction is. And if the intention is to create discomfort and manipulation with someone, that is something that is up to you to garner. If that's the journey you're on and that's the choice you're making, the reactions and responses and results you're going to get will reflect that. And right or wrong, just is. But do know that we receive what we give. And the more we choose to try to get what we need through manipulation and dishonesty, what we receive is not going to be true. It will be gained because it's gained in a way that's not respectful and not honest to ourselves. So it's up to you. Only you can make that decision. Just depends upon what kind of outcome you want from your life. So some of the benefits of the social perspective are a greater understanding and self-awareness, because you understand your impact and interaction in social contexts. There can be a lot of validation and acceptance through this. Just understanding, do I align with how I perceive myself, with societal norms? It can create a validation and belonging, and which is, internally we all have a sense of wanting to belong somewhere, even though I want to keep my own identity. I don't conforming with others does not feel good to me, although I do like to belong to the community that I'm in, or the household that I live in, or the people that I'm with. I want to belong to that. I still want to be myself. Also can really challenge unhelpful narratives. So maybe we've been influenced by something that we really don't like, and it's challenging our mental health. We can look to societal reflection to clarify those things. It also helps us build resilience between internal and external obligations so that we can get on the same page with our authenticity. And this can help build resilience against societal pressures that don't align with our lives. When we see things that don't align with us, we know when we have clarity about who we are. This definitely is a way to improve relationships, understanding how people perceive our narrative, help us to communicate more effectively, create empathy, and find social support. Personal growth here is huge. If we can be honest with ourselves and, again, non-judgmental. The judgment thing I just want to address one more time is it's an awareness that something is not right. Something does not align with us, right? If I look at something that I'm doing and I start judging myself for it, I can immediately say, I don't like this about what I'm doing, so I'm going to choose not to do it. And if you run into this judgment with other people, it's an awareness about, this doesn't align with me. This person's actions, beliefs, their narrative doesn't align with me, and I can make a conscious choice to then step aside from interacting with that person on a deeper level. It's a way of keeping yourself safe. So don't look at judgment as bad or as good or bad, but look at it more as an awareness. Social awareness and perspective also helps reducing cognitive dissonance, as I mentioned before with my client who believed he was an outdoorsy person but didn't really live in an outdoorsy way. When we have this clarity, it helps us be able to align ourselves more authentically with our own lives. It can also help cultivate self-compassion, recognizing that many of our self-narrative elements are shaped by social influence helps us be more compassionate toward ourselves, especially when regarding perceived shortcomings. We're way better at making informed choices if we understand how we're interacting with other people and how their responses are. And overall, it helps to enhance authenticity with ourselves. And the more we can live in an authentic way, the better we are going to be aligned with our life, which helps reduce stress, anxiety, depression, mental health issues in general. A lot of these mental health issues that we deal with come from a misalignment in one part of our life or another, and it becomes a struggle and difficult. We want to escape this. This is where addiction issues come in. This is where interrelational issues come in. We just need to be clear and honest about, am I living in the way I want to live? Or am I living under obligation of another person? Have I decided that what I'm doing has to happen because someone else needs that to happen? Okay, if those situations come up and there is a conflict with the authentic or non-authentic way you're living, it needs to be addressed. Because you're worth it as a person to live the life that you should be living for yourself. You'll never be well if you're not able to live authentic and aligned with your life. It doesn't mean hurting people in the process, but it does mean actively, it means taking action to get there and maybe making compromise with others in order to be more able to live in an authentic way. There's a lot of practical application that can be used here to understand this more. Mindfulness is a great way. Seeking feedback is important from friends or professionals that you trust. People that would tell you the truth about yourself or how they perceive you. Regular reflection again, engaging in activities that feel right to you and are right for you. Challenging that negative self-talk. It's a big one. and celebrating your unique aspects. Our uniqueness and individuality is what makes us interesting to other people and to ourselves. And it helps us become more authentic in the way that we live if we can embrace these unique qualities. Uniqueness doesn't keep us on the outside. Uniqueness helps us become part of a whole while being ourselves. So how does maladaptive behavior get included with the personal identity? Well, this is a story for another time. This gets pretty deep, and although it does become an aspect of the personal identity, I think this deserves its own post. So for today in the self-narrative, take some time to think, to reflect. Who am I? Ask yourself that question. What are my roles? How do people perceive me? How do I perceive myself? Is it true? Is it true that the way I see myself, is it true for the way other people see me? Do other people see me differently than I see myself? Look for alignment, and if it's not there, take some steps to make that happen. And if you don't know how to make those steps, a coach can help. Okay. Enjoy your day.